essentially, we're going to be talking about the 6 parts to financial planning. So what does that mean? So there are many parts to financial planning, and it's not just investments. And you have heard me say multiple times that you probably need a financial plan, right? And so let's talk a little bit about why. And today we're going to talk about that. And then each day subsequently after this, there will be a theme of which financial planning part of the process we're going to talk about. So like tomorrow is investments. However, there's a really, really, really important part to digest first before we ever move on to anything else. And sometimes that's the hardest part. And so we're going to talk today about getting organized and setting goals. So what I want you to understand is, of course, you want to grow your wealth. Well, you can't do that if you don't have a couple key things in play already. So we want to make sure that we talk about those, and then we're going to continue to talk about all of the other strategies this week. And some of them are going to apply to you now, currently in your life, and some of them are going to apply maybe down the road or to other individuals in your life. So please, if you find any of the content that we're sharing applicable to other people in your lives, please share, whether that is our Facebook, our LinkedIn, our podcast, whatever it might be. You can also catch a lot of the content that we share video-wise and podcast-wise also on our YouTube channel. So for those of you that didn't know that, we are covered on all of your social media platforms. That being said, let's get started. Let's get started getting organized, okay? So a lot of times we feel like, or maybe you feel this way, that the reason why you maybe aren't getting as organized when it comes to your finances or wrapping your head around everything is because it maybe just seems like there are a lot of moving parts. And guess what? Most likely there are a lot of moving parts to your financial picture. A ton of moving parts. That's why it's going to take me an entire week to break things down. And even longer. I'm just going to scratch the surface most days of the things that are important when it comes to financial planning. So the first step is really, I want you to understand where everything is. And no, that doesn't mean like literally where all of the statements are. Yes, I want you to gather all of them, but I also want you to have understanding where things are, who are they with, why are they there? What is, important about that relationship? What do you like? What do you dislike? So we're going to break that down a little bit for you. Before you even get to your goals, it's nice to know where everything is. And so having like a little bit of a checklist. So we talked about that in some of our previews to our conversation today and some of our social media posts. What is that checklist and what does it look like? Well, it's kind of fictitious because everybody's checklist is going to look a little different. But essentially, what you owe and what you own, as well as what goes in and what comes out. And I don't mean like food or anything like that, sillies. I mean like what goes into your bank account and what comes out. So what is your income and what are your expenses? I know that those two pieces aren't super sexy, you guys. I get it. But if you want to talk about some of the other things that are like building wealth and then, of course, how do we spend it and how do we have fun with it, then we need to understand at first just what are the main things that we're doing right now. And then we can establish, okay, are they helping us get to the places that we want to go, which is establishing the goals. So I'm going to break them down into 2 subcategories of getting organized. So first and foremost, I want you to understand, what do you own and what do you owe? So for instance, your assets, what do you own free and clear? So is your checking account is an asset, your bank accounts, your investment accounts, your retirement accounts, right? Those are things that you own that you might not have any debt on. I want you to understand when you're looking at your cash, how much cash do you have set aside? And this is something that I've talked a lot about, especially in the last several months. And guess why? Because COVID isn't the only life experience that we're going to have that's going to rock our world. We're probably going to have other experience or life transitions that happen to us. In fact, I almost want to say I use the G word that's not allowed in my industry, but we can't say guaranteed. But I almost know that you're going to go through something else, and it might be great, and it might really rock your world. And so having that cash set aside is super important to understanding that we have some level of security. And so I'm going to talk specifically just to my female investors, or those individuals who identify with this thought process. And maybe you're not female, maybe you just identify in this space, but most likely, more than that, you identify as female in this space. So I'm reading this great book, and honestly, I love Jean Jatzke. She's amazing. If you want to talk about like a woman who talks about money, not just in the aspect of like logistically, but talks about the mindset behind it. She's really great at it. Anyway, she talked a lot about like the aspect of needing some level of security and a safety net, right? So that we know when life rocks our worlds, we have some level of sense that it isn't going to just completely destroy everything. Well, that's why I talk about an emergency fund, a stash, whatever you want to talk about. There's actually some strategy behind what does that look like for you. So you want to make sure, let's break this down a little bit further. If you are a dual income household or a solo income household, like it's just you, right? You want to have 3 to 6 months of living expenses, 3 on the short-term side, 6 on the long-term side. If you think about it right now, as you're listening to this, it's September it's October. Oh my God, you guys, it's October. Holy crap. Anyway, it's October. And so we think about it: March, April, May, June, July, August, September. And now we're in the 7th month of really experiencing, for some, job loss or layoffs. And so if we didn't have, 7 months of savings set aside or alternative sources of income, we're probably really hurting right now. And that's hard. And I want to make space for that, because we're all going through a lot of emotions right now, and we can easily jump into all of the strategies around what's the best stock to pick, what's going on. But if we don't really understand the why behind what we feel and how to be prepared for that, then we're just really living in the motion. And I can tell you that there are plenty of people that live in this space of accumulated wealth who don't have happiness associated with the dollar amount that's in their bank account. And that's really why we spend so much time at Forethought talking about your goals, what's important to you, and then talking about the strategy. So getting back to the cash flow aspect of things, though, it's really important for a lot of women to have that safety net. Historically, honestly, women have led more on the cash side of things in secure sense of the word, as opposed to investments and growing, but also having some risk associated with that. So think of it in this perspective. If you are a dual income household or you're solo, just you, then you want to have 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Now, if you experience fluctuation in your income, let's say you are a contract worker, you are an entrepreneur, or a salesperson that's on commission, and then you want to plan for the longer, right? Some instances, like my lovely husband who works in a job whose income fluctuates, he sells alcohol, his job wasn't actually that impacted negatively from COVID. Thank you all for supporting his job as you all rushed out to buy your beer and your wine and your alcohol in March and April. But that being said, some other areas were highly impacted, right? If we look at the restaurant industry, if we look at the travel industry, some of those spaces. So planning out that 6 to 9 months, even 12 months in some cases, because we see that having to like that rekindling of what income looks like and what expenses look like. So having that nest egg of cash is something that will give you that sense of safety and security. Now, that's the only thing I can say that's going to be safety and security is cash, because it is insured by the FDIC when you have it, unless it's underneath your pillowcase, which isn't necessarily where I recommend it to be either. That being said, looking at your cash, looking at it, and not physically, but looking at it in your bank account, what is it yielding? And so that means, what is it earning for you? Let's be very frank and honest, most banks right now are not paying very much. That's because we are in a low interest rate environment. And so looking at maximizing that emergency fund to earn you as much as possible. So looking at places like Capital One, 360, or some other online institutions, just make sure that you are also checking their validity. So how long have they been around? What do they have to have on reserves in order to be able to provide you the interest rate that they are going to provide you? So that's like understanding where the immediate cash is. This is what you own. The next steps are, okay, you have this emergency stash and your checking account and savings account established. Okay, those are assets on your balance sheet. The next step is understanding where your investments are. Rounding out those old 401k statements. I can't tell you how many times I sit down with people and they're like, oh yeah, forgot about that old employer that I have sitting over here, and I don't even know really what it's doing for me or not doing for me. Making sure that you round out all of those things and include that. And I'm going to just drop into the comments here just a link for you all. And if you're listening to this later, it'll be in any notes that we provide you. That being said, it is a tool that we provide for free on forethoughtplanning.com that allows you a space to kind of record all of these things as you go along. And we call it your wealth assessment tool. So you have the ability to go through and actually collect these. I want you to look at, when you're looking at those investments, those old 401ks, any investment accounts that you have, stocks, bonds, all of those things out there swimming along, where are they? What firm are they with? Is anybody helping you with it? Is that something that's important to you to have somebody help you with? And maybe make a star next to it. You can fill in, on the side who's helping you manage it. What does that look like? Then we're going to talk about debt. And I think there are really some important keys in understanding what you owe. So looking at these parts of your financial picture first is how do you, again, assess where everything is. This is the biggest part of homework for clients when we start to talk about financial planning, because most people don't want to go through and collect everything, because we are complicated individuals and we have things all over the place. Guess what? I do have a sense of organization around my financial picture, but I do have things in multiple different locations. I have different credit card companies. I have 2 different banks. I have a bank and a credit union, and then I have investments, but most of my investments are all in the same place at Forethought. But that's where we have to have an understanding of where they are and who's servicing those for us. Then understanding our debt. So we looked at all of our assets, right? We know everything that we own. That includes real estate too, any collectibles that you might have, automobiles, those things too. Don't forget about those pieces of things. They are assets for you, and they're going to be important when we have the conversation on Thursday around taxes and estate. That being said, we're going to now transition into the debt conversation. So understanding your outstanding balances, and that doesn't mean what is due to be paid. What is the total amount that you owe? So your total amount of your mortgage, your total amount of student loans, your total amount of a boat loan, right? What is it if you were to pay it off today? Understanding that balance, understanding if it is a term loan, so that means if it's paid over a period of a certain number of distinguishable months or years, understand how much you have left in time to pay that off, as well as what is the minimum payment and what is your interest rate. Right now, I've gotten a lot of questions around home refinancing or home projects, or just is it an appropriate time to do some of those things. I think you need to assess what is your overall total debt and what can you afford. So refinancing is a great opportunity for us to explore some of those things and looking into it even more in depth. So let's think of it in this perspective. So you have an interest rate of anything above probably 4.5 right now. It might be a good opportunity to sit down with a mortgage advisor and have a conversation. And I say a mortgage advisor because that's somebody that's actually going to look at the whole picture for you, not just how much they can save you, but can you afford it? What does it look like? What is the cost benefit reward to you in your own personal situation? The interest rates, particularly on credit cards right now and student loans, are something for you to focus on. Now, for most student loans, you are in forbearance or deferment, not having to pay those until potentially January of next year, and depending on what the next stimulus package looks like, if they can come to an agreement on what that looks like, then that might be extended too. But at this point in time, if you have any outstanding other debt, like revolving credit, personal lines, personal loans, I would really focus on, if you have the ability to pay extra on that because you're not paying your student loans right now, pay that other revolving debt down so that you don't have high interest rates in that space. So now that you've kind of taken what you own and what you owe, you have a good understanding of what your net worth is. Now, this might look different for each individual. It might be positive, it might be negative, depending on how much wealth you have consumed. I want you to understand and set that aside for a moment, because we can't move the needle in any direction that you want to if you don't have a good understanding of how your day-to-day money flows. And this is where I'm going to get into some more mindset pieces of things, because a lot of times we think of money coming in and out, or budget. If you've heard me talk for a long time, I don't call it a budget, I call it cash flow, going in and out, because a lot of people really just don't feel like they need to have a budget. But you do need to have a good understanding of what goes in and what comes out, so it's just not willy-nilly flying all over the place. So for the next 30 days, I want you to challenge yourself every day. Write down what you spend. I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent. Just write down what you spend for the next 30 days. Then after you've done that, like so every day you write it down, or every week, and pick a day that works for you in your schedule. Again, no cookie cutter approach here, you guys. It has to be what works for you and what's sustainable for you to be able to do. That being said, I want you to understand the difference between needs and wants, and what's necessary. So a lot of times we talk about expenses being needs, wants, and wishes, right? Well, I think needs also need to be considered into what is necessary for you to survive in your life. What is necessary for you to feel good about yourself? Like for me, therapy is a necessity. Being able to work out is a necessity. Being able to eat healthy is a necessity to me. I will sacrifice in other aspects of my life in order to be able to do those things. Those are things that are really important to me. Sleep is also one. I did not get a lot today, so I just yawned. You're not boring me. The subject isn't boring me. I'm just a little sleepy today. It's Monday. So I want you to, again, for the next 30 days, write down every single thing that you have purchased, whether it's with cash or with credit, or with Venmo, or whatever you're using to make those purchases. And I want you to assess, is it something that you wanted, but you didn't necessarily have to have in order to make yourself really feel good? Like, is it, think of need and necessity being the same thing, right? So I don't need a Gucci bag. I might want a Gucci bag. I don't don't even know what Gucci bags are. I don't know. Whatever the thing is on Instagram that they keep like advertising to you. Mine is like a stand-up desk. You guys, I'm a nerd. Clearly Instagram has been trolling my search engines or listening to me, but like think about it in that perspective. Is it something that you actually need? Or is it something that's going to help you survive? So for some folks, like getting your hair colored is something that you really need to do to feel good about yourself, and so that you can show up really great for yourself. That being said, my hairdressers are going to be like, don't you dare offer box dye. And I'm not. But like, how often are you doing it? And are there any aspects from your hairdresser that can be in between things? Like, I know there's like root touch-up things. I don't know. I don't color my hair, you guys. I'm just really, really blessed that I don't have to do that. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for the good genes. Anyway, I want you to think about those things. Write them down. And then I want you to assess what is your income. So on the wealth assessment tool, you also have the ability to go in and tally everything up at the end of the month, where everything was by category, and then what your income is. A negative number means you're spending too much. A positive number means that you have excess. Now, what do you do with that excess, and what does that mean, right? I think those are the things where we have to start digging into some strategy and defining what goals are important to you. But you've got to, if you don't have a good sense of what's going in and what's coming out, you can't tackle the other aspects of how to grow your wealth or how to save or how to pay down debt, which, are very key roles in being able to do the first thing, which is build your wealth. You can't do those things if you don't have a good understanding of where everything is going. And if there's one particular person in your household, if you are a dual household that manages that aspect of things, I'm empowering you to understand what happens if that person isn't any longer living. You need to understand how that affects your own personal financial situation, and you need to be more educated and empowered in that space so that you have a freedom of understanding. Life, again, will happen to you, and you don't want it to hit you at the knees and knock you down, right? We want it to be something that you feel empowered around, and you have the ability to be able to be really educated around that space. So once you've looked at those pieces as a part of your cash flow too, I want you to assess, where are you saving? And to what vehicle are you saving? I don't mean like for a car. I mean like, okay, are you putting it in cash because you don't have your emergency savings yet? Are you putting it into your 401k or a retirement plan or another investment vehicle? Where are you putting that money, and how are you doing it? And lastly, as a part of this, I want you to get really like gritty good with your goals. And so take out a piece of paper sometime within the next 24 hours after you've done this other activity of understanding where everything is, and write down what your goals are, okay? If you don't like the net worth number, I want to make that what? I want to pay down what? Like, get very specific. By when? And then, who's going to help you get to those goals? If you want to save and you want to be at a certain equivalent of wealth, why? What do you want to be able to do with that money? What does it look like? What does it feel like? Who is with you? Where do you want to go? All of these things. I know traveling isn't necessarily something that everybody's doing right now, but how are you getting to the places that you want to get to? So if you want to send kids to college, if you want to take care of your grandkids, if you want to pass on generational wealth, if you want to quit your day job at corporate America and start your own business, what does that look like? What are those goals that you've set aside for yourself? Then I want you to assess, how do you measure if you're on track with your goals? So what are you doing right now? And maybe this is your first step in the journey, which congratulations, like good job showing up and having this conversation or listening to this so that you can have a better understanding of what to do. Download the wealth assessment tool and then decide, is this something that I want to do or that I need help doing? And there's nothing wrong. Look, you guys, we all need each other. Now more than ever in this lifetime, we need each other. And it's okay to lean on other people. I don't know how to do everything. And so I hire people, or I, team up with people in spaces that I don't know how to do things, and they know how to do things better than me. So understand if this isn't something that you want to do, reaching out and interviewing people to see if they are the right fit for you and how they will accompany you along the way. And we'd be happy to be a part of that interview process to see if we would be a good fit for you. If you're not wanting to involve somebody else right now, how are you going to hold yourself accountable? And if so, do you need somebody else to help hold you accountable? Those are 3 questions I want you to focus on. So again, where are you saving and how much? How do you measure if you are on track with your goals? And if you need accountability, who is it? So as you go forward this week and we continue to break down financial planning, step number 1 to get yourself organized, download the wealth assessment tool that's on my website. You can then track everything that you own and owe. So understand what you own and what you owe, understand what your cash flow is, and breaking down those goals so that you understand where do you need to go. Because we can't start talking about strategy if you don't really have a good outlook of where it is that you want to go. And if you're struggling with how to identify some of those questions and you need help, feel free to schedule a wealth assessment half-hour complimentary time with me where you can ask me those questions and we can break down some of those things and set a path forward for you. That doesn't necessarily mean that that you would work with me, but I would love that. But know that there are individuals out there that are willing to help you know whether or not you are on track to where it is that you want to go, or at least progressing to that space, right? Everything that we do in life is always going to be in progression. We are going to get to that space of always knowing where everything is, if we don't have a plan in place, right? If we blindly go in one direction, we aren't actually going to end up at our destination. We're going to end up somewhere else. If you've ever been blindfolded and tried to walk in a straight line, has that worked? If it has, kudos to you. It's never worked for me. So I want to make sure that you take the blindfold off and really empower yourself to move forward in your financial life. So I hope that you found all of this helpful today. If you are rewatching, please let us know below with a comment on what you thought was most helpful. And don't ever forget, as I always say, you are so worthy of building your own wealth. Have a wonderful Monday, you guys. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Thrive Forward, a podcast for you about finances, health, and mindset. Please share with somebody that you think might find this of value, as well as subscribe so you don't miss any of our episodes that we update every week for you. You can even find us on social media on our Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube channels, all at Forethought Planning. Thank you again, and remember, you are always worthy of creating your wealth.